In this tutorial, I'm going to walk through the process of using box modeling to model the Master Sword from Legend of Zelda. I've already set up my reference. If you see, if I go and try and click here, I can't because it's on a plane that's frozen. So I'm going to start here in the perspective view, and I'm going to come over to create, and I'm going to make a box. And I'm going to make it 25 by 25 by 85 and click create. All right, so that is the start of my box. So here's what I'm going to do. I want to right click and convert to editable poly. All right, now it's an editable poly. I'm also going to right click and go into object properties, and here under rendering control, I'm going to set the visibility to 0.1 and click OK. Now I can sort of see through it. So at this point, I want to make sure that my box is centered on the sword, so I'm going to kind of raise it up to about where the hilt is. Looks like I may need to shift it over just a little bit to be centered. Probably going to be okay there. All right, so now let's go into vertex. I'm going to grab these vertices here at the top. I'm going to drag them down further. And what I'm going to do at this point, let's see, let's go to the top, and I'm going to switch to scale. I'm going to thin this guy out a little bit. All right. And if we look here in perspective, that looks pretty good for thickness of the blade. So that's kind of what we're going to start with. All right. Okay, so here's what we do. We go in when we're modeling, and what we're trying to do is we want to match kind of the general proportions of the object. Also, let's drag this down. The blade ends about here. And I'm going to bring it down this far because this is about as far before it really starts to taper in. And I'm going to go into scale. So right click scale. And what I want to do is I'm going to hover over X. And I'm going to click and drag. And you'll see in my other views that that's dragging that out. All right, it's making that a little bit wider there. But it's only going on the one axis because I'm constraining it to X. And I'm going to come out here. And this is about right for where that blade goes. And notice I am using the front view as my reference, right? I'm not using perspective, because if you were to try and do this in perspective, right, if you try to view it from the front, you'll notice that as you move, the sword moves because there's distance between them. Let's go in here. I'm going to change this to shaded. There we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to go through and I'm just going to region select. Now I have the edges on all the sides of my sword here. I'm going to click connect. And I want to use the slide because I want to, there we go. I want to get this edge. I want to get an edge that kind of sits right about here where that angle changes. Now I'm going to come in here again. Now I'm going to Alt W to make this full screen and hit Z to zoom in on that mesh. And now I'm going to hit select one edge and click ring. I'm going to hit connect again, but I'm just going to zero out that value and click OK. And now if I right click and go to move, I'm going to zoom it up because I want to kind of line it up where that direction change happens. I'm going to right click, go to scale, and again I'm just going to scale it along X here. This guy I could probably come out just a little bit, and because there's an angle change here, let's just region select those and hit connect. I'm going to start to move them out and then go to move. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm adding geometry, connect, scale. Notice I don't grab the center triangle, I don't grab the shared, I go all the way over and make sure I'm only scaling in one axis. Because basically at this point what I'm doing is I'm working to match the silhouette, something that we like to call the peaks and the valleys of the model. Okay. So now I can take these vertex points, and I could probably just move them all the way down to the end. And if I grab these edges again and click connect, I can move them down. Right click and scale. Let's scale that in. And I can start to connect it and work to adjust that scale. And so we're kind of going for something that is a little bit more what I like to call low poly. We're not trying to exactly match every contour. In this case, I'm just going to region select the very bottom here and bring those guys closer together. I'm not going to collapse it to a triangle yet. Z to zoom out, and then Alt-W, we'll look at the perspective. All right, so we kind of have the blade, the basics of the blade going here. So here's something we're going to do. We're going to select one of these edges, and I'm going to grab this ring, and then I'm going to click the Connect button. And that's going to put a series of edges right in the center. So now I could come in, and I'm just going to region select everything, but then deselect. And so holding the Alt key, I click here, negative space, and drag, so I only have the outer edges selected. So now, here in my front view, oops, it deselected, so let's just undo that, Control Z. And I'm going to hit F2. F2 should toggle the shaded view on and off. And what I want to do is I want to deselect this center section because the blade is solid here from here on up. Right? And it's really just the bottom part of the blade. And so now I'm going to do outline. Right? And so outline is going to push those edges in. There we go. And we just click OK. And now I'm going to switch to vertex, grab those vertex points, go to move, and just raise them up to match that size. So now let's kind of come down here to the bottom, and we see what can happen when you do that. So I'm going to region select all this, right click to make perspective active, and hit Z, and then orbit out. So basically what's happening at this point is the sword is collapsing inside out on itself, which is no good. So what we need to do is I'm going to region select these guys. I'm going to scale those out a little bit. And then these guys here, I'm just going to region select and hit collapse. And collapse takes whatever you have and collapses it down to a point. I'm going to do the same thing right here. Collapse. I'm going to grab the edges at the very end and collapse them. So now we kind of have that shape for our sword. I can come in and region select and hit connect. Right click, go to move. Move that down a little bit. But now we sort of have the real shape of the sword blade that we want. We'll zoom out. All right, so that's a nice looking blade that we have there. Okay. So now we want to work on the handguard. All right, and so for the handguard, what we'll do, I'm going to just rename this for now. I'm going to rename this blade. I'm going to go here to box or geometry. I'm going to make another box. I'm going to right click to make perspective active. And I'm just going to go with those same values from before and hit create. Right click to get out of box creation. I'm just going to raise this up. And again, just kind of set it. Let's see, if I select the sword is sitting at point this location. Right, I'm in move. I'm going to actually copy that value, select the handguard, and paste that value in there. And hit enter. There we go. So now it's perfectly lined up with the other one. So let's move this down about here. Right click, go into object properties. And again, we're going to adjust the visibility to 0.1 so it's transparent. And then right click and convert to edit poly. So kind of the same process. We're going to select the vertices and we're going to move them down to about here. Bring this guy up a little bit. There we go. And now let's select both those verts and go into scale. And I'm going to scale them out just a little bit. And here from the top, I'm going to scale them in a lot more. So it kind of covers up the blade a little bit. And there we go. So now what we want to start doing is we're going to, same thing, edges. I'm going to region select those and hit connect. Make sure they kind of line up there. Going to move, raise that up a little bit. And now I'm going to grab the polygon on the end, so Control R to orbit here in perspective. And select that guy, there he is. Now I'm just going to use Extrude, and I'm just going to click OK. All I wanted to do is really get that geometry out. So now I can select it, go to vertex, move those points over. Looks like I could probably grab these, grab the ring, and connect them. Go to vertex, kind of adjust that shape a little bit. And then from here, what I want to do is I'm going to grab that polygon. Looks like he's already still selected. Extrude him out more. And I can move him up. And I'm going to go into vertex and adjust his position about here. Now from this point, what I'm doing is I wanted to have geometry because I want to grab, oops, I want to make sure I'm in polygon here. I want to make sure I have this polygon selected. I'm going to extrude that out. Just click OK because again, I'm just about getting the vertex points here. So let's go to vertex. And I'm just going to move these points over. There we go. So there's shapes we're missing. So what we're going to do is select an edge and click ring. And I'm going to use the connect button to connect those together. Because now I can adjust some of my geometry to match. If I want to line this up a little better, I can raise that up. If you grab in the center, it gives you total control to move it around. I could take these verts and pull them out more and kind of adjust his shape a little bit. And bring this guy back in a little bit more. There we go. And anytime I select, in case you're missing it, I am making sure that I'm region selecting because I want to make sure our geometry is complex. It's the front and the back. And so I'm making sure that anytime I select, I'm grabbing both the front and the back. Because there's mass, there's edges on the back side. So region select and connect, go to vertex point, and I'm just going to pull these vertex points out. So there we go, our sword's coming along good. Let's go into edge, and I'm going to select the ring to get all those parallel edges. And real quick, I'm going to right click and go top level, click on the blade, right click and say hide selected to hide it. And now, in edge, I have my edges. So let's just do that again. Click on the top, click ring. And I'm going to go to connect, but I'm going to do 2 segments. And I kind of want to use the pinch here to pinch them together. Say OK. Now I can grab those vertex points and just raise them up to line them up with that reference there. These guys, I can scale them in a little bit. Now we'll just have to compare that with the blade. All right. I'm going to right click and say unhide all. My blade is back. This is looking pretty good. One last thing. I only have half of it. I need to make sure I click symmetry to get the other side to show. Symmetry is a great modifier. It allows us to mirror from one side to the other. So I'm going to right click on the model and say convert to edit poly. All right. So now I have that part of the blade there. Another thing I can do here with this, with the handguard, is I'm going to click on one of these edges and click ring. And if I come in, I'm going to say connect. And then I can do similar to what I did before, where I'm going to region select here, grab all these. I'm going to do outline, but just a little bit. I don't want to do too much of an outline on this. There we go. Give it a little bit more form. All right, we got that in place. Now we kind of want to get this shape going here. So let's just go ahead and we're just going to make a cylinder. And I'm just going to do this from the top. I'm just going to click and drag. And then from the front, I'll start moving him into position. So remember, we want to select, we want to make sure all these kind of are sitting on the same x-axis. So I'm going to copy that, grab him, and right click and paste that in. There we go, he's in the right spot. And then let's take this. He doesn't need to be 18 sides, so we can take him down to 12. He'll be fine. He'll still look good. Right click, go into Object Properties, and I'm going to set him to 0.1 and say OK. And I'm just going to raise him down, or lower him down. And then I need to reduce the number of height segments to 1. I'll right click on the mesh and say Convert to Edit Poly. And now in vertex mode, I'm going to take my points and lower them down. I'm going to right click and go into Scale, and I just want to scale them out. Right, I'm going to do the same thing here at the bottom. Select them all and scale them in. And then I'm going to grab that polygon on the top. Right, so let's go into orbit, Control R here in perspective and orbit around. So now I can select that polygon on the top and click Extrude. I'm just going to click OK because I don't worry about making that the perfect extrusion. And then if I click Extrude again, I can bring that down. I'm going to right click and do scale to scale him in to get him to match. You see how we're working to match our proportions. One more time, the semicolon, and then I'm going to move it up here to the top. There we go. Right click and scale it. I'm zooming out. Let's go ahead and make sure we have that one polygon on the very top selected again. I'm going to hit F2 to make sure you can see it. There you go. And I'm going to extrude it again. Click OK. Right click under move. Go back into scale and scale it out. Same thing. And basically, oops. Right click, go into move. And we're just basically extruding this out to get the general shape. One more time, extrude, bring it up, and then scale it in. Alright, so now we have this perfectly round handle, which is not necessarily what we want. So we're going to actually add a FFD 4x4x4. That's freeform deformation 4x4x4, and it's a volume. And what we could do is we're going to grab control points. I want to grab the top row. I'm going to hold control and grab the bottom row. And then I'm going to use my scale here to scale them in, and that's going to kind of compress it. You see what that's doing? It's doing a nice job of like kind of thinning that out for us. Alright, it's looking pretty good. Right click and convert to edit poly to make that permanent. One thing I like to do when I'm working with cylinders like this is I'm going to go ahead, go into object properties, set visibility to 1 and click OK, and make my perspective view visible. When I'm working on, I want to make sure I'm in select. When I'm working on cylinders, I like to make sure that I don't leave just one big n-gon at the top. That's a polygon that's not 4 or 3 sides. So select those 2 verts there at the top and click connect. I'm going to click on these 2 and click connect. And basically, I'm just defining it to actually be primarily 4-sided polygons. Let's make it darker so you can see. I don't want it to be, it should be either 3 sides or 4. Ideally it's 4, but you can have 3. It's not the end of the world. Anything more than 4 though, you should really go through and define the edges like this. Z to zoom out, Control R to orbit, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. I'm going to click on the bottom 2 points and connect them. And I'm just going to work my way through selecting 2 edges and connecting them together on the sword. Alright, and that's kind of the basic process here. Now, what you are thinking at this point is, well, that's cool, I got a sword, but it's 3 different pieces. Well, what we do is we'll select one of the pieces, probably the handle because I like where that origin is, and under Edit Geometry we're going to click Attach, and we're just going to attach the different pieces together. So now they all become part of the one mesh. And at this point I can go into my sub-object, so go into Element here, and I'm just going to region select and hit Z to zoom out. Now I got the whole thing selected, and I'm going to hit Auto Smooth. Now if you notice, I'm going to hit F2. When I'm in here, that shade's a little bit weird, so I'm going to go to Display, and I'm going to turn on Backface Cull, and look at that. The blade is inside out. And what happened was I had my box and I lowered those vertex points when I started modeling, and that actually made them inside out. So let's go fix that real quick. I'm going to go into Element and click on the blade. I just need to click Flip, and now he's no longer inside out. How did I know that? I knew that because looking at it, I could tell when it was in F2, the shaded mode. It was a little bit darker, which told me that was inside out. It'll be more obvious to you when you're working on yours because you'll kind of see those errors. Different versions of Max shade back faces differently. Alright, so another thing we're going to look at here, When you have a polygon like this, the software is going to decide on its own how those angles go, and that's not necessarily always what you want. So I'm going to come in here and in vertex mode, let's take a look at this. So we basically have a blade coming down. So let's just go ahead, I'm going to region select all of these guys here. If I hit connect, now the blade, it keeps it coming straight down, and then the blade transition right there. And same thing over here on the side. If I orbit around, you can kind of see it's doing this weird pinch that's not consistent. So I'm going to region select and click connect, same thing. And now if I zoom back out and once again select everything, select everything, and under polygon smoothing groups hit auto smooth, you'll see it fixes that shading there. So there you go. One last thing that I'm going to show you is a set of tools up here, up under modeling. So I'm going to double click on this edge, and it's going to grab that entire loop. I'm going to come up here and find loops, and I want to click on the button that says set flow. And I want you to see, I'm going to move my window over here so you can see this. Loops, set flow, when I click on that, it's going to adjust the position of those, and it's going to average out between this edge here and the edge out the center. So loops, set flow. You see how it kind of curves that out, gives it a little bit more of an organic shape. And you could go through and you could do that on areas of your model where you kind of want to average out the shaping. I don't really want that one. Let's just F3. Yeah. Grab that there on the top. Do the same thing. Loops. Set flow. And it's a way to get a little bit more form into your model. It's a really fantastic set of tools. And then what we could do is we could just put a symmetry on, and then it'll mirror it left to right. And then if we put another symmetry on and we just change the axis, and you see I clicked on Y, and what that did was it did put it on there. I just need to click the flip again so that it goes the opposite direction. All right. So now my sword is out here like so. I'm just going to right click to convert to edit poly to make that change permanent. And then lastly, I'm going to region select all these edges and then deselect, because really I just want to grab the bottom part of this, and I'm going to find a button that says make planar, and when I click on that, it's going to flatten that back out for me. So if I orbit around and I hit Q, so I'm just in select those guys and do make planar, it's going to flatten that out. So now my sword, instead of being just completely flat everywhere, it actually has just a nice little bit of curve to it, and that's using loops set flow. You'll notice it doesn't work here, and that's because that only shows up under edges, edit edges. So let's grab our sword one last time and do auto smooth to smooth that out again. All right. One additional thing you could do is if I come in here, what you may want to do is actually with the blade manually select these vertex points, and I'm going to clear all those. I'm just going to manually assign them to 10. Same out here. Oops. I'm going to remove that and assign those 11. And then if I go around the back side, I could do it the same thing similarly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll just clear all those. Set those to 12. And then the same side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Clear all those and set those to 13. I am noticing that when I click, there's some weird selections happening. And I wonder if, see, look, if I region select, looks like I got a lot of extra edges. There's some weird extra verts right here. So I think I could just take those and click remove to remove them. And then region select the bottom. There's still 3 vertices selected here, so if I just hit collapse, I'll collapse those down to 1 point. There we go. I bet if I region select here, wow, look at that. I'm looking at it, I only see 2 vertices, but it's actually showing 8. So I'm just going to collapse those. Now it's down to 2. And if I come in here, let's try this from the front here. Yeah, this guy's back at 2, so everything's good. So be careful with symmetry. You may end up with weird issues where it has multiple vertices stacked on top of themselves. There we go. That's something that you'll learn to notice like I just did there. Could also, I would region select the handle like this. Now let's assign it its own smoothing group. They don't all, you can reuse smoothing groups. Like I could reuse 10 here. If I hold shift and drag across, I can assign that 10 as well. There we go. So I think that's looking pretty cool. We're going to rename this sword and hit enter.